Hey there. So we are recording, and since everybody's here, I mean, I feel like we should exchange pleasantries and St. Patrick's Day greeting. We can also just sort of get on with it. So here we all are on March 17th, 2022 at 6:03 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. I don't have to read that act, although, I've never read it before. And
well, knock yourself out, Kevin.
I like to think that we're in the waning days of this. Now, no, I won't. We don't need to hear it, but there it is. That we're on Zoom and no in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. Wouldn't it be funny if like the door behind one of us opened up and just somebody kind of waltzed in? Hi, I'm here.
With a no war sign?
Right now, it's only us. I think we've got competition tonight, not least actually from the St. Mark's Street Park Working Group, which is meeting right now.
Oh yeah.
So they're stealing our ratings because it's just us and Dave. Hey, Dave. But anyway, let's get on with it. So. Call the meeting to order again. It's now 6:04, and we'll note that we have a full boat here with Kate Battles, myself, Kevin Miller, Rebecca Deans-Rowe, Jim Bloschke, and Annie Pfaff, as I see you on the screen, and our recording secretary in attendance. So the first thing we have after that is the approval of minutes for the meeting of February 17th, 2022. And I have a couple things, and I don't know if anybody else want to go first, and if you've got anything for Dave on this one?
I think I emailed Dave, so I think I'm good.
Oh, good. Okay. I saved it because I we go back and forth. Like we have to think about what's the best procedure for that, is whether just to cover it here or to send some corrections. All right. So I'll go through a couple things. Dave, and you know what? Should I bring Dave over?
Sure. I'm usually on.
Yeah, I know. So
whether I like it or not.
Your meeting space.
I'm usually in my PJs. For those, nobody knows. Now they do.
It doesn't seem to be working as I try to promote him. But in any case, Dave, what I have is in the approved minutes of previous meeting section, this is the mind you, the English professor nudge in me. Eyes are without an apostrophe. It looks like they should have them, but they're not. So eyes, AYES. And then the last line of that section, all others approved, is also without an apostrophe. In the next section, Diane Byrne is actually, her first name is spelled with one N rather than two. So that appears I think twice in that section. You can do a global search for that. Yeah, it's the first line also of the second page. It's Ms. Diane Byrne with one N, D-I-A-N-E. In the third paragraph on page 2, the end of the third line, I think the word should be structural instead of structure. Then Vice Chairman's report, I think should probably read Vice Chair in the name of taking the gender out of the chair, which I think is good. And then lastly, in the 1, 2, 3, 4th line on that section, Vice Chair's report, the sentence is, it was asked if anyone could research the means and cost to acquire funds to cover the cost of installing the signs. And I would just make a mild edit there to say it was asked if anyone could research the means and cost to acquire and install the signs. And that's all I've got. So picky little stuff. And no one else.
Can we move to accept those as annotated, or do we have to wait for an updated version?
No, I think we should.
You can say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. You can say, Jim, typically somebody could then make a motion to approve the minutes from February 17th as amended.
So move.
There you go.
Second.
Great, okay. Moved and seconded. We'll go to roll call vote. Kate Battles,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Annie,
Aye.
and Miller is aye as well. So 5-0, Dave, on accepting the minutes as amended. Third item is, and it's funny to do this to a completely empty room, although I'm aware, by the way, also, you know, the live streaming thing, I would set that up. Jay has indicated that he'd sort of post the recording like very quickly, like the next day or the next morning. So not to worry about it. I was going to do it because I have a packet of explanation how to, but actually then you get into this thing where it wants a confirming phone number, and I think it's Jay's. So you can't really do it yourself unless you're like a town person and got it going. So, but yeah, the third item I have on here is the discussion of the organizational structure of the Historical Commission in light of the resignation of the chair. This may involve the nomination and election of officers, and it's a, you know, it's funny. I was losing a lot of sleep over this, actually. It's sort of thinking about it, you know, it's just a kind of crummy, it felt like position to be in. And I kind of fretted and thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And finally, I thought, my God, Kevin, you're being really ridiculous about this because first of all, you know, this is not like Mr. Smith goes to Washington and you're not Jimmy Stewart, you know, this is like Kevin Miller goes to Southborough, but you know, that's a kind of a much lower grade sort of play. And, you know, part of it was thinking, you know, what do you say? I mean, it's a kind of, you know, the whole story, and anybody that cares to follow it, you know, is following it and through other means. And I don't know, you know, I finally came down to this, and you would think that I would be more articulate and you know, elegant on the point, having had so much time to think about it. But at the end of the day, I'm as tongue-tied as I was 2 or 3 weeks ago. And you know, it comes down to when this is a month now. But it comes down for me just wanting to just know, and you know, Michael knows this already. I know. But I feel like I want to say it in some kind of public forum that I'm only sitting here because of him. And, you know, Michael has from the first, and it was about a year ago that I kind of first sent him an email message about some stuff in town that I was curious about, that's all. And actually the enduring memory I have of this is that Common Street cast iron street sign that was right at the bottom of Common at Main, and it was taken down during the sidewalk repair and work. And Marcy and I were walking by it all the time, and I was so in love with that thing. I'd taken a photo of it when it was up, and it was sort of backdropped with St. Mark's Church, and I thought it was so beautiful. And I'm sort of a sign, the polite word is aficionado. The colloquial and probably more correct word is freak. But I like old signs, and was kind of really smitten with that one. I thought it was so beautiful. And I tell you the story, I don't think I did. And, you know, it was down as part of that work, kind of lying in the grass and in the snow, actually, because it was during the winter. I kept seeing it. And I was really like, well, doesn't anybody care about this? Like, what's going on? And I was a little bit like, we'd go for a walk, and I'd every time we got to the townhouse and walked by that sign, I'd be like, what's wrong with these people? The sign is just laying there. And then at one point, it was about in early March, came upon it, and it was snapped, and it had been broken, like stepped on or driven on or whatever, you know. And I was so heartsick about it. And that was actually the thing that finally had me try to, you know, get in touch with this historical commission guy, which was Michael. And when I brought it up to him, he knew exactly what I was talking about and had said, well, actually, I asked the DPW to sort of put that in safekeeping. during the work, and you know, it got overlooked. I understand that. I mean, they got a lot of things going on, but it got kind of busted, and then he forthwith, you know, called them and asked them to pick up the pieces and to look into possible repair. And you know, it's sort of sat there since. But the point of that story is, you know, it came out of that very simple thing, and then through that, I mean, of course, I've met you all and you know, a bunch of other people who like care about the same little stuff that I care about so much. But it was really sort of, Michael was the doorway to that. And you know, from the very first time I spoke to him, he has been unfailingly kind and generous with me with regard to his expertise and his time. And I place a very high value on his experience and his knowledge, you know. And I don't know, you know, as I've come to know the situation around town and the various players and what goes on and the history of it all, I mean, is there anybody who's, you know, done more to sort of protect, preserve, and promote the historical assets of this town over the past 20 some odd years than Michael? If there is, I don't know who it is. And so I'm just very grateful to him personally. And taking the optimistic view, as I think he is doing, and in fact, I know he's doing, in this idea that, you know, as one door closes, another opens. I note that he's gone from historical commission, but certainly not gone from town life, and pursuing the things that he believes about passionately, with passion. And since he, of course, among all the many other impressive things that Michael does, he's going to continue as president of the Historical Society. And so I expect, and I know for sure that, you know, we're going to obviously be working, you know, together quite a bit and collaborating and coordinating things. And, you know, one of the, you know, Michael and I agree on quite a lot. And we also have different views on certain points, different styles and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that we sort of debated was the issue of the Historical Commission and the Historical Society. And, you know, I know Michael often thought of it as sort of two outriggers of the same canoe kind of thing. And I essentially agree with that, but I also think that we now have an opportunity to create a certain kind of definition between the two groups that I think is beneficial, or will be beneficial to both entities, right? That the Historical Society is going to benefit from this and the Historical Commission is going to benefit from this. And one of the things I've noticed in kind of coming into this whole world is that a lot of people in town can't keep the two bodies straight. I hear it all the time. I attend a lot of town calls, right? And I always hear town officials, you know, get confused, and they start to say Historical Society when they mean commission. They say commission when they mean society. And I think, you know, one of the good things, again, I'm trying to look on the positive side of all of this, is that it'll give an opportunity for the Historical Society to do, and I know we have overlap in membership here, but for this Historical Society to do what they do really well, you know, even better, and that for the Historical Commission to be very clearly its own thing. And what I look forward to is, you know, I've been an advocate, I think, from the beginning of my involvement here, for sort of a stronger working relationships with a lot of different boards and commissions in town, because I think that's the way we can get things done. But I also think that actually you know, under different, you know, two different sort of leadership kind of structures will help us work better with the Historical Society, or at least that's, I think, the face that I like to put on it, because I think, you know, it'll help us, again, do what we do, collaborate and coordinate when it's appropriate with the Historical Society, but be clearly our own group doing the things that are appropriate to our kind of bailiwick. Does that make sense? So, there's a second part to this, which is some thoughts about moving forward, but I just dominated the last 5 or 10 minutes. I just want to give you guys, if anybody has, again, for me, I thought, I don't need to hold some kind of like wake for, our chair or our former chair, because he's doing fine, this is not a problem. I mean, he, taking care of his own business and doing it quite handily. So I like I said, all I wanted to say is that I'm very grateful for his generosity with me in terms of time and expertise, because it's meant a great deal to me. And it's put me on a good footing, I think, to go forward here. Because Michael runs the Historical Society, and runs it so well, I expect there to be lots of conversation between us on topics of mutual interest. But again, I see it as an opportunity for them to be themselves and for us to be ourselves. And I think that will actually make us both stronger. So I don't know if anybody wants to talk or.
I just say that was very, you said you weren't gracious, but you were. That was a very gracious transition. And that I agree with you that we can both have stronger identities, more defined identities, perhaps moving forward, so that people get a really clear sense of the sort of different areas of historical preservation that we deal with and attend to.
I agree.
Thank you.
What she said.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
All right. Well, can I go on to part 2?
Go.
Yes.
All right. Part 2 of this is what next, right? And, it's funny because, again, Michael, immediately after resigning, I took it as very sweet and gracious. He immediately started referring to me as the chair of the Historical Commission. And I was a little bit like, am I? How does that work? Like, I really had no idea. And I have to tell you, because I am, alas, let's say, seasoned enough to recall, actually, what came to mind was when, because it was around the same time of the year, it was in March, I believe, when John Hinckley tried to assassinate President Reagan in 1981. The old, incident when then Secretary of State Alexander Haig kind of rushed into the White House press room and announced, "I'm in control. I'm in control." And later he said, well, he just meant sort of administratively at the moment, but it appeared at the time that he was forgetting that there was a vice president, a Speaker of the House, and a president pro tem of the Senate. That would have been Bush, Tip O'Neill, and Strom Thurmond, believe it or not, in front of him in terms of line of succession. So all I could think of, Michael said, "Oh, okay, Kevin Miller." He was, telling people, well, he's the chair now, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, all I could think of was Alexander Haig. All respect to General Haig, who's since gone to his reward. But I just thought, this is not the look I'm, particularly interested in. So anyway, I started, I said, well, let me figure this out, right? So I looked in the eCode 360, I looked on the town website, I looked on state materials, and I couldn't find anything about it at all, So finally I called the town clerk, and Jim Haggerty called me back almost instantaneously and was very gracious with his time and his advice. And he said, well, you didn't find anything because there isn't anything. It's kind of the Wild West, and all the boards, committees, and commissions, sort of make their own rules about how they want to handle such a situation. But his advice to me coincided with what I believed, was that he said, elect officers, move on, like right away. And I, I felt that, frankly, before I called him, for the reason being that, we have to operate. We have to, move on. There's no point in kind of sitting around. And I said to him, I'm perfectly content to run the meetings as vice chair, until we get around to electing people again, like, we did it in August, I believe. So, it could go till then. But he said, among other things, you want to have backup, and I do. I want to have, obviously, if hopefully there's no John Hinckley Jr. in my future, but should I stub a toe or get a cold or, catch COVID, and we have a hearing coming up with, let's say, a demolition delay bylaw hearing, we need to have, there has to be somebody there who can do it, who's the backup. And so, and for other reasons about showing that obviously we're organized. And, I was thinking of this actually in terms of what's going on in the planning board right now. And, Don Morris pulling back from public service, after this incredible run of 41 years on the planning board. And, as much as I'm going to miss, I've come to really enjoy the way he runs a meeting. And well, Kate can attest. I mean, planning board is very like,
Me too. I love it. Yep.
They've got their patter down,
They do.
Yeah, I love the way they take a roll call vote. It always amuses me immensely. And I mean that in a very loving, respectful way, but so
they are terrific. Yeah.
But Don Morris is, stepping down after 41 years, but they are hardly rudderless over there because, planning board, as you well know, has a deep bench of real talent. And now they've got a competitive race for the open seat. So, although everybody's going to miss Don Morris, no one has to worry about planning board. And I view it as the same thing over here on historical. Obviously, the circumstances of the loss of the chair are somewhat different, but it doesn't make any difference. It's the same situation here. We have a deep bench of a lot of talent, and there's no reason why we should miss a beat in going forward. So, again, Jim Haggerty's advice was move on, elect officers, and get about your business. And so that's what I would suggest tonight. And I just wanted to hear if anybody had thoughts on doing that, or if you're, if you're in support, and should we proceed?
I'll make a motion that we appoint
Nominate.
Kevin Miller as
Kevin
chair.
I'll second that.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to express some appreciation, Kevin, for how you've stepped in recent months and have been as dedicated to the cause and thorough and open to ideas and all of that. But I think you really helped run this very, very well. And that's why I make a very strong second if you're willing to agree with you as chair.
I am, and I appreciate that. It means a lot to me coming from this group. So yeah, I'm willing to do it and happy to do it if that's the will of the commission. How do we do this?
Very grateful.
Oh, we are grateful. Absolutely grateful. Yep. You do a great job.
Yeah.
Well, shall we just vote and get on with it?
Yeah.
Because I'll start blushing otherwise. So how do I do this? The motion is made and seconded to what?
To nominate Kevin Miller as chair of the Southborough Historical Commission.
Okay, Dave, get that down. All right, so do we roll call vote then?
Yeah.
Kate,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Hi.
Annie,
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
I don't want to vote for myself.
You can abstain.
Okay, I'll abstain.
Yeah.
Miller
And then
abstain.
I believe that this just goes through the fiscal year, June 30th, right? And then we have to reappoint
Okay,
at the beginning of the next fiscal year.
good.
So,
And-
if you decide to jump ship.
Which you're not going to do.
Well, no, I won't. I mean, I feel very, honestly, I feel very committed. you know what? Honestly, I watch a lot of meetings, and one thing that really sticks in my craw is when boards get into this sort of self-congratulatory mode. So I want to watch it. But I just think so highly of this group. I really do. And so it's a pleasure. And it's so funny when Michael sort of dragooned me into joining historical, dragooned me into press ganged me into being vice chair. And well, here I am. But now I am fully committed, and I'm delighted. And I need a vice chair because it's not easy, actually. So where are we? Is there? I mean, their feeling of
Jim or Annie, are you interested?
I would like to not be under consideration there. I have a lot on my plate, so I'm happy to participate and do subcommittee work or whatever I can, carry a shovel, but not as vice. Annie?
I might say the same thing. I'm very happy to help, but I wonder if there's, another role that might be more appropriate. I am very committed to this committee, just, with the little one and, my work on the CPC as well. It might be a lot to take on, but happy to help. Kate, Rebecca, what do you guys think?
Rebecca, you have an urge? If not,
I don't really.
Okay.
I'm in the happy to help group,
okay.
but I know you're a treasurer. Can you do both?
I cannot do both, I don't believe, but if Annie wanted to take on, or somebody else, I will say and we'll get to it with treasurer's report. It's really simple at this point to be treasurer. I'd be happy to pass that on because I've been doing that for 6 years, and I wouldn't mind sharing that job.
That's actually a role that does interest me.
Okay.
The time and commitment, I think that's probably more aligned with what I can commit to. So if you wanted, to, pass that on, I'd be happy to take that from you, Kate.
It's pretty easy. So you and I could definitely, goodness, maybe we could even meet in person and go over it.
Love that.
I know, right? So yes, I will do a switch. I will make a switch. If people are
I
down
nominate
okay
Kate
with that.
Battles as vice chair.
Yeah, but do we have to elect a treasurer before we can elect you as vice chair? What's the sequence of operations?
Oh, I don't know I don't know. Maybe we should do treasurer first. Fire me from treasurer. I don't know if it matters.
Yes, let's do treasurer first. I'll nominate Annie Pfaff as treasurer for the Historical Commission.
Second.
Great. Well, then roll call vote. Kate?
Yes, aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Miller says aye. So Annie, you don't have to, but you can.
Yeah, I'll abstain.
All right. So 4-0-1, Dave, and Annie Pfaff is elected treasurer of the Historical Commission.
Thank you.
How do we have a?
I move to Kate Battles be vice chair of the Historical Commission.
I second.
Great. All right. Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Miller says aye. Jim Blaschke.
Aye.
Annie Pfaff.
Aye.
Rebecca Deans Rowe.
Aye.
And Kate Battles.
I'll abstain.
All right. So 4-0-1, Dave, electing Kate Battles as vice chair. Wow.
Everybody.
Congratulations.
that.
Well, thank you all. That was great. I mean, it's a new day over here at the Historical Commission, and we are going to get up ahead of steam and get some things done. So can we go right to next item on our agenda, which is now budget report by the former treasurer and now acting vice chair, Kate Battles. Can you bring us up to speed on that?
Yes. And like I said, Annie, maybe over the next, it's super simple, but maybe over the next week or two. Do you do it you don't do any of that for CPC, do you?
No.
Okay. All right. It's so simple. And so you and I can go over it, and maybe at some point, if you're even comfortable, you can come to the townhouse and I can introduce you to Heidi Lindsay. I don't know if you've met her. Have you met Heidi?
No, but I would love that. I would love to spend some time in the townhouse and see you.
Oh, good. All right. So I could introduce you to Heidi and Brian Ballantyne, the treasurer too. And like I said, it's really very simple. One of the only biggish things is usually, I think it's in December that I go to a budget meeting just to present our budget. So with that being said, so a couple quick things. Our budget right now, as we speak, we still have over about $1,900. I did just submit an invoice for Dave. So we'll be down less, but just sort of as a reminder, most of our budget at this point, a very significant majority, we're going to return to the town because a lot of it was for our internet, which we don't have any longer at the museum. And also, on a sad side, the other thing that I often take care of is the historical signs, and the gentleman who paints them for us passed away in December.
Oh, my.
Yeah, he was elderly. He was in his 80s. He was lovely, but we had plans to meet this spring because we've spent so much time talking. But he did unfortunately die of COVID this winter. So according to, and it's funny because, not funny, I've been talking with the Historical Commission in Marlborough, and Robert there, I sort of set him up with this historical sign program, and he had started ordering signs and loved them and had a really nice relationship with Bob Leonard as well. So he and I have been talking about it, and I think he has somebody who's going to take over for him. The only problem there is that, and I haven't reached out, and that is my goal next week, is to reach out to this gentleman, is that like Bob Leonard didn't change his prices for something like upwards of 20 years. So unfortunately, I think we're going to see an increase, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And I'm going to talk to him next week. So we're in good shape budget wise. The other issue though is, I think most of you know, so Brian Ballantyne came forward to me I think it was last week at the townhouse when I was working, to let me know that recording secretary budgets have been removed out of most committees other than, a handful of permitting boards. So he asked me to take that out of our budget, and that was the majority of our budget that we were requesting. So I believe we were requesting, I think $3,000. We are down to about 1,000 now that we're requesting. It was going to be about $750 if you took out all the recording secretary monies, because I only had 2 line items in our budget for this year, which was recording secretary and historic signs. So I talked to Brian and I said, would he consider allowing us to just keep it at a solid 1,000, keeping in mind that perhaps there would be an increase in the signs. I told him about Bob. He knew because I had been talking about it. So we're going to be at 1,000, which is really low. However, we don't pay internet. We don't pay water anymore. We won't pay for recording secretary services. So it really will be our sign program until, and hopefully perhaps for, fiscal year 24, if we have some other project we can plan for and budget for next December. So I'm not terribly concerned about it, but I did just want you all to know that. So
Kate, if we were to anticipate, say, I'm making this up, but it could be very possible considering how long the sign prices have been fixed. If we were to anticipate a 50 or more % increase in the signs, what would that do to the number you'd want to hold back in reserve instead of returning it to the town?
I think because I have sign expenditures in the, this past year's budget, I do think I'd be able to use some if we wanted to purchase more signage right now. That wouldn't be a problem, but I can't carry any of it over, until into fiscal year 23. I can't do that. So, but I don't see it as hopefully too much of a problem. We've given away a lot of signs. So, it won't be great for next year if there's a significant increase in the cost of the signs, but I'm hoping not. If this gentleman is following in Bob's footsteps, I'm hoping that they're still relatively reasonably priced. Because even if they're $150, which would be double, more than double, you know, we'd still be able to buy a good amount of signage. So I'm not worried. I'm not too worried about that. But like I said, if we run into that by next December, we really focus on figuring out what we want for a budget for the following year. So
And I-
in the 6 years I've done it, our budget has been everywhere from between 2,500 to 3,500 was the highest, really. If we have a project that comes up, you know, we'll figure that out. I don't think, as long as they approve the $1,000, and if I have to, you know, address it at town meeting like I did last year, I don't mind having to do that. So, but I can't imagine there'll be a problem because we're going down $2,000. So, and budgets across, I'm sure a lot of you know, budgets across the border are kind of being reduced this year. So I expected it. So I think that's all I had on budget. It will come up again, I think, when we talk about the select board article, just with a question I'll have, but I think I'm good. Does anybody have any questions? For me? Okay. I think
I've seen- Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I know I'm good. You go.
I've seen, I believe, out of advisory, the percentage of budget reductions. And as a percentage, I believe that historical commission may be taking the prize.
Yes,
in terms of belt tightening.
yes.
Because I think we're down very significantly. I think, you know, there should be some sort of
Prize.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we should get a prize. I know.
Gold
Well,
star.
it's part of it is that, you know, and the issue is just that I only had those 2 line items in the budget. And so once they'd said that they're removing recording secretary services, it just took the majority of that away. So, but Brian was really, you know, very flexible when I talked to him and just sort of said, I just don't know what the cost of the signs is going to be. So can we keep it at least at an even 1,000? And I think that we'll be okay with that. I really do. So, you know, so, okay, that's it for me.
Great. All right. Thanks, Kate. Item 5, which is a discussion of the Historical Commission's position on proposed warrant article 32, which is a procedure regarding the adoption of board committee rules and regulations. And this came in response to an email that was sent to all of us by Andrew Bennington. This is again, the warrant article is sponsored by the select board, and I think it's Andrew who is sort of shepherding it through. And I included the packet. Yeah.
Someone's got a lot of background noise. It goes away from time to time.
I'm hearing that as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I muted myself. It's not me. I was trying to figure it out.
It just went away.
Maybe it was Dave.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's there now.
Maybe it was my marker. Sorry,
Well,
I was writing.
no, there's a sort of white noise in the background.
Oh, huh.
Actually, yeah, Rebecca, it's your it seems to be something in your,
My laptop.
yeah.
It's cooling.
Oh, maybe that's it. If it's okay if can I mute you for a second to,
Sure, I can mute myself. Oh.
yeah, it's
That's
Rebecca Stan, I think. Because I just muted her.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Just wave, Rebecca, when you want to talk, just wave and I'll take you out of.
Sign to us.
I'll take you out of jail. Anyway, yeah, this warrant and the position may have changed again, but again, it's this, it's a very straightforward article. I know that it was Andrew's email went to everybody, but I also put it in our meeting packet when I sent, you guys materials so you could review it again. What it says, I can read this very quickly. This bylaw shall apply to any multi-member board, such as ours, that may be defined as a public body under the provisions of GLC 30A, Section 18. Prior, and here's the thrust of it, prior to the adoption of any rules or regulations, whether pursuant to state law or local bylaw, such a public body shall hold a public hearing with respect thereto. Such public hearing shall be noticed by a suitable posting by the town clerk at least 14 days prior to the date of the hearing. The posting shall include a copy of the rules and regulations that the public body is considering for adoption. The public hearing shall also be noticed as feasible on the town's website or such other electronic media as may be available. And then the third paragraph, as to the extent that the enabling legislation of any public body requires public notice of a hearing prior to the hearing on prospective rules or regulations, the public body may combine its notice hereunder with the notice required under said statute, provided that in no event shall there be less than 14 days prior notice. All I thought when I read this is, you mean we don't have this already? I personally, like to discuss it because I think it's appropriate for us to, I want to respond. We got the request to provide our input. My quick 50-cent take on it is that, of course, sure, like if we're going to, and this would come up, as we hopefully work out revised rules and regulations pursuant to the demolition delay bylaw, that of course I would want to hold a public hearing on them and post them in advance and have people have an opportunity to review them, hold the hearing, and then move forward. So my impulse is to, if we can, and I want to hear what your thoughts are, but to vote yes on this and respond that we're in favor of it.
I agree. I think that it does two things. It's a natural expectation. If you're going to put something in place that is under our purview, like a demolition bylaw guideline or whatever the supporting procedures were for that, that's going to affect the town citizens and property owners, then it should be up for a public session. So I'm fine with that. I think it makes perfect sense. And then pragmatically, the other reason you want to do that is that you never get accused downstream of doing something untoward or, behind the backs or, something that could be a cause for question. So no, doing it right up front makes perfect sense. I'm in favor.
Annie?
I totally agree. Yeah, I agree with Jim. Exactly. It's transparent. It gives people an opportunity to come and ask any questions if they like. Give us feedback, perhaps, say, well, this is how I interpret it, which would be good for us. My only question, and I've read it a number of times, so I don't think it's an issue, is when they mean that it needs to be publicly posted, I don't think that it's, from what I'm reading, it doesn't mean in a newspaper or any of that, right? That when we have to do that for other public hearings, there's a cost associated with it, correct? And the building department, I believe, takes care of that. That's in their budget.
On the demolition delay bylaw,
Yeah.
I believe it's charged to the applicant.
Oh, right. Yes, you're right. And so because then so I just wanted with the treasurer's hat on, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something that we would need to budget for. But it seems that it just needs to be posted, physically posted by the town clerk and be on the website and stuff. That it doesn't need to be any public newspapers. Am I reading that right, do you think?
Yeah, that's the way I read it.
Okay.
And to be frank, I mean, even if it were interpreted by the town council as requiring a newspaper posting, if we were doing this, let's say at the culmination of a process of working on the rules and regs for the demolition delay bylaw, it's only gonna be a one-time thing.
Yeah.
presumably. So,
Okay, you're right. So it's insignificant. I
Yeah.
guess going forward, if we think there's going to be some kind of cost incurred, we just want to keep that in mind when it comes to budgeting. Otherwise, I think I agree with Jim that I think absolutely this should be done. And I absolutely support it. Yep. I think it's great.
Great. Annie, did you have anything?
No, I didn't have anything else to add. I'm, fully in support of it. I think it's a great idea, and especially as we think about updating our, our own rules and regulations, I think it would be good for us to go through that process. After some of the things we got, caught up on earlier in this fiscal year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'd really, I'd enjoy the transparency and the public nature of the process. Let people get their thoughts in prior. Rebecca, I'm going to unmute you. Take you out of jail. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
you're all,
seems fine.
your fan is behaving.
I moved my speaker.
Ah. Did you have anything on this?
I think it seems like a fine idea. I mean, I don't see there's ever a good reason not to have more input and, more people raising questions and issues. It helps us to make it stronger, whatever we're trying to do.
Shall we take a vote to, I think it would be good to have a vote that we affirmed our support of this article. That was the ask for our input. And so if we're all in support of it, let's vote it out. Should we have can we entertain a motion to the vote in support of what is now numbered, and again, it may change. I don't think it will at this point, but Article 32.
I move that we express our support for Article 32 of the warrant.
Second.
Great. So moved and seconded. Can we roll call vote? Kate?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Bye.
Annie?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
And Miller votes aye. Dave, that's 5-0, unanimous in support of warrant Article 32. All right, moving on. Vice Chair, I guess, is now Chair's report. The first thing is I wanted to update you all on our request, wonderfully, capably, and on very short notice. ARPA committee request form bid, give us some money, which was prepared by Annie Pfaff. And wow, it was just, I was so grateful for the help, and Annie did a sensational job. I did send this right to you all, so you've had a chance to look at it. Very specific, and I will say, because the ARPA committee meets later this evening, and I hope to catch some of it after our meeting. That, from what I could see, it was one of the only requests at that point that had a very specific number on it. Everything else was sort of floating around. May cost a couple $100,000, may cost this, may cost $1 million. This was, and a local vendor to boot, $26,532. The end.
Well, had I known we didn't need, precise numbers, maybe I wouldn't have been so ambitious with that. But
well, yeah, I frankly think it goes to that we did, that you did the proper homework, and this is not some, we're just plucking in things out of the air. But Annie, can you just, because it's all you're doing, I want, if you have anything you want to add on this, or, I mean, it's well put together, and
yeah, I'll just say, it's, you have the attachment to PDF, it's pretty self-explanatory. We had talked about this at our last meeting. I kind of, did some very, rough research on, what these signs look like for other, other towns. So one that I thought was, really, representative was the Newburyport Historic District that you'll see in the PDF. Kind of the only variable that I wasn't really sure about is, the exact size we would want. You know, signage has a tendency to actually be a lot larger than it appears to be from the street. So I kind of, you know, for the purpose of, you know, getting a cost estimate for this, you know, kind of rounded up, and did, you know, maybe bigger than we might actually need. And then, you know, if we get the funding, we can always, you know, kind of round down, and, you know, kind of fine tune the size and the specifications. But, you know, if we go with a cast bronze sign, you know, just as you see in the PDF, you know, I think the final number, it was just over $26,000 to do all of the signage that we had talked about, including some really nice mounted on some nice poles in town. So we would need the help of the DPW and you know, town folks to do the installation. So that part, I didn't have any, you know, resource to figure out how much that would cost or whatever. You know, but I think all things considered, this was, you know, I also watched some of the you know, some of the ARPA committee meetings, and this was one of the smaller requests, you know, that are brought in front of the board. So you know, let's see how they respond to it. You know, I hope that, you know, this is something that they might respond well to. You know, it's really concrete. You know, it's a project that's ready to go. We've done the research, we've done the legwork, and, you know, pending funding, we would be ready to move forward really quickly with this. And I personally think that would be a win. You know, not the kind of project where, you know, it's just, you know, a theory at this point and needs a lot of legwork to come to fruition. So I'm hopeful that they'll, you know, include this in their recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for funding.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, I will say that on the issue of the actual dollars and stuff, this would be a project, the pitch that I would like to make to the ARPA folks is this would be a project that would give a very quick and a concrete, you know, here's a demonstration of what a small bit of the funds do. And it is really such a small amount. You know, it's funny when you hear talk about ARPA, the money, I commonly hear people saying, well, it's $3 million, it's $3 million, it's $3 million. That's correct. It is actually, as I understand it, $3,051,241 that the town is eligible for the maximum amount, which means that the 26,532 is a kind of rounding number in this whole thing. It's the part that no one even bothers to mention. In other words, it's, it's 3 million. Well, it's 3,051,000, like I said, $241, of which we'd like to have 26,532. And for the record, that is 0.87% of the total, less than 1%. So it is
kind of high impact, I think. I think it was very high impact. It's very visible.
It's a high impact thing for a small dollar amount. The last thing I would say about it, I know Rebecca has something, and I also have actually one thing to add on this, but I know Rebecca's got something, and I will say before I go turn it to her, is that what the hell was I going to say? Now I've lost my train of thought. With the help, I think, of the technology people, the ARPA committee, of course, they now have a survey out, right? And I think you can get it off My Southborough or whatever. And I looked at it on my phone, and it's actually very hard to do on the phone. And so I went to a browser to look at it. And it asks you, they have, I believe there's 16 various things you could spend the money on. And ours is one of them, and it's like sidewalks, tax relief, targeted relief for citizens, that like a needs-based kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. And then you're asked to sort of move it up and down according to, you know, the order of importance or the order that you want it. And the one thing if I get a chance that I will say to the ARPA people, one thing I've discovered is watching a lot of these town things and town surveys is that the way the survey is written is often highly influential of the result you get. The way it's phrased, the way it's presented, and the one, and it's not a criticism, it's just a mild observation about the survey that's out there now, asking you to rank your different priorities, is that they don't have dollar amounts attached to them, right? So, you know, lots of the proposals you're asked to rank, for instance, you know, could, let's say, sidewalk construction, could be $1 million, you know, or build a new senior center, you know, that kind of stuff. There's some very, very, very expensive projects, tax relief, it's undetermined. And you're asked to sort of, again, move the slider up and down. I would make the argument that if it were noted that this particular request that we're talking about would be 0.87% of the total monies, that people would slide it up a little bit higher. In other words, oh, here's something we can buy or get, you know, for next to nothing, basically, in the grand scheme of things. And I don't say that lightly, because I'm inclined, I take the point of view of the sort of taxpayer who doesn't particularly like paying his taxes kind of thing, you know, like I like to keep them down, you know, so I don't, in other words, I don't spend money, the town's money lightly, because it's mine too, you know, but I think if they had in other words, costs associated with each of those priorities, that we actually people would be inclined to slide ours up because it's not costing that much. Anyway, Rebecca, I know you have thoughts on this, and I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I just had a couple of things, but I first wanted to thank Annie for putting together this for us and on short notice and doing a great job, very complete. I did find some information on the sign for South Union School, the National Register Historic District sign there. And so I do have a dimension for that of 14 by 18 for the ones that are mounted on buildings. That might be a good thing to consider.
Absolutely.
For us to, that was in 2015, that was $663, but I'm sure it'll be more, but it will be less than the large signs. But I also thought that it might be good to order one for the library as well, because it's a historic building. And
yeah, I think that's included on there. So the two, oh no, it's not. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that on the building.
The townhouse.
So the townhouse and the library would have the mounted signs. And the only other thing I would say is that for the old burial ground, we would need a post, I think, unless, I don't think we should put it on. Yeah, I think we probably would need a post for that.
Okay.
So
I think with those
tiny little things.
Making the mounted signs smaller, I think within that all, in budget
it'll all come out in the wash. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
I think so too. But It's great. And we do the Newburyport sign. We have a mock-up of that looks almost identical to that for Southborough that Kate Madison had done to pitch the idea initially, to give people an idea of what it looked like. So it's at the museum if you want to drop by and take a look.
Sure. I had no idea. I was putting this together so quickly. I was kind of shooting in the dark. I'm sorry, I didn't even think of that.
No, that's exactly the thing. And I think they'll look great.
Thank you for doing this, Annie. It's great. It's
sure.
really, I printed out the packet for myself. I read it all. You did such a great job. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And like I said, I think it's a big impact project for short money. Of course, I'm on the historical commission, so I go to towns and I always notice these signs. I take pictures of them when I go places. I have a fondness for them, but I think that they really do stand out. And, Kate in particular spent such a long time getting this to come to fruition. And I just think it would be add just a really beautiful detail to the town. So I appreciate you doing that. I really genuinely appreciate you putting this together. So thanks.
And let me add it was not only done quickly, it was done really, really well. It's worded
Really
compelling,
well.
exact budget figures, local craftsmen, and the signs will last 500 years. That was my favorite part.
Actually, Kevin added that part. Kevin added the 500 years part, and that really does. I thought that was very impactful. So thanks, Kevin, for that note.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, you're gonna spend the money. You want it to last, right? I mean, and these will. So let's hope. One last wrinkle involved in this is that Annie and I, because we were on that, the request, received an email from Marika Munsif last Friday, and she was, I very much appreciated it, and I thanked her for the message. And it was, she said she had noticed on our agenda talk that we've just had about the ARPA funding request, and she did, want to make me aware that through the one-stop grant program, there might, if we do, should we have trouble or are turned down by ARPA, that there's a grant program for wayfinding and branding, and it's unclear whether that's quite the same. And my understanding from this email is that she says part of the EDC's plans is to create signage wayfinding for downtown Southborough, but we haven't been successful yet in securing any grants for this purpose. So, that's another angle that EDC has thought about in part of their thoughts on, I think, mostly connected to the downtown district. But, there's something there. There's a thing called the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative. And she gave me the contact information. So I haven't had a chance in the last week. There's been too much going on to deal with this. But, and it's not clear to me whether whether or not it's a viable path, but I very much appreciated Marika's outreach on this. And, I hope what I said in reply was that, because she offered to talk to us about it or consult and offer information. And I said, well, thanks very much. And we'll probably for sure be taking you up on it, because I'm sure there will be questions down the road. And, maybe there is some way to kind of, again, this is sort of my goal going forward with this, is to figure out ways that, because I see so many boards and committees that where we have potential common cause with, potentially EDC, certainly planning, and they're concerned about trees and, Arts Council, conservation, all that kind of stuff. So this may be an avenue. So I've got that in the back pocket. Again, it's not clear to me whether it would be an option for the signs, but maybe.
Why don't we play this particular request out, because Andy did say in the bottom no other source of funds are known. So why don't we just downplay that for the time being?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's, I think every single proposal that came forward in ARPA, there's always some other place to get the money.
Oh, yeah.
Truth be told, right? It's just, what are your odds of really getting it? And as Marika's message indicates, EDC has not had any luck yet getting that money for that kind of initiative out of them. So I don't, it's not, I think at the time that the proposal was submitted, and it's still, we don't have any kind of certainty that there's a viable option. So, but, I felt compelled to let you know that I did get that communication. And like I said, I appreciated it very much. It's always nice when somebody from another board or commission, in this case, the economic development coordinator, reaches out to you.
I was glad to hear about this tonight, because there was it's a bit of bridge mending between us and them, as you know, from past correspondence.
Absolutely. And I like I said, I was very grateful for it. So again,
Kevin, could I add that the funding for the plaque for South Union did come from CPC.
Right.
So that an application there could be another.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I
so,
was gonna say the same thing, worst case, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say, Rebecca, that maybe in the following budget year, worst case, if this doesn't come through, maybe we could apply to, the CPC to sponsor these signs too, yeah.
right. And I think like all of those things that people have asked for ARPA money for, let's say for the sidewalks. Well, if you don't get it from ARPA, you're gonna have to figure out some other way. If people in town want sidewalks, and there's always a way. But I think we're solid where we're at, and it is such a small amount. So anyway,
Bottom
really,
line, we really want these, I
yeah.
think we really
Well,
want.
and
these.
also I think it's good for the town for us to move very quickly on it, and
Yeah.
not take years to get the signs up. I mean,
Right.
it would be a point of pride, I think, for everybody in Southborough to drive into the center of town and see National Register, downtown Southborough Historic District. Wow, cool.
Yeah.
There's a there kind of thing. So
Can I just say
onward.
quick things before we move on?
Sure.
So just in response to the CPC thing, so every CPC project is required to have signage associated with it. So my thought is that I haven't seen what's on the South Union School, but that was probably associated with the South Union project of, the facade and windows and all of that, that was funded with CPA funds. I don't think in general this type of project would, this isn't a preservation project. So
yeah, I see what you're
signage
saying.
in general would not really
That
qualify
makes sense.
for CPA
It does.
funds.
Yeah.
It's not preserving anything historical. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, anyway, the point being was that yes, there usually is some other way to fund it, but I wouldn't say that CPC would be a good place to go to for this. And then just my other just general comment, this whole proposal thing came together so quickly, and it got me thinking about, boy, if we had more time to think and brainstorm as a committee, what else would we come up with? And not that like we're going to have money or, we're going to have these opportunities, again, ever, but, should we have like, a running list of, projects that we'd love to tackle given the time or resources, or ability to do so, just so that, if anything did come up, we could put something together or have multiple, multiple submissions for this kind of thing. There were other, boards and committees that had, up to 4 different requests. So I don't think we're, missing out on anything, but, boy, wouldn't it be great as a committee if we had kind of a, list in our pocket of things that we'd love to accomplish, someday, even if it's all a pipe dream for, what we could get done.
That's good idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful idea. And I think a meeting where we devote a little time to brainstorming on a kind of annual basis would be really productive. Because we definitely, there's so much other things going on. I think we get sidetracked at times and sort of lose grip on the larger mission. So that would be fantastic.
A planning meeting.
Maybe it could,
Yeah.
we could have a planning meeting, or, it could be, maybe it could be sort of an item that we always carry on our agenda in case somebody, during the month had sort of an idea that they wanted to discuss. That would maybe work. But I think at some point, if we have sort of a slow month, it might be nice to have specifically a planning meeting. But like I said, I think it's something you can carry on your agenda, like treasurer's report or something like that.
Project proposals or something.
Yeah.
I think maybe before, we get to the end of the fiscal year, we could work that into one of our meetings for sure.
I think that's a great idea. Good job, Annie.
I've got 6B, which is a little update on the St. Mark's Triangle project, and there's a lot cooking. I will say that the St. Mark's Street Park Working Group I always have to stop because it's a long name and make sure I get it correct, is meeting as we speak. They also had a 6 p.m. Tonight meeting. So they're underway. I read their agenda. And, as you know, they had previously met on February 16th, and they met also last week on the 10th. And, the meetings have been fascinating, productive, and very challenging. I watched their last meeting on the 10th, and I thought, it was really fascinating in a certain way. I thought this, if they had sort of expert testimony to come in, they would need, an archaeologist, a historian, an ethicist, a cartographer, a sociologist, a cultural anthropologist, and I think a landscape architect, and also possibly a sound engineer to cover all the topics that they've been taking up in a sort of very, very wide-ranging discussion. I want to let you know that I received a call from the CFO, because of course we had the letter that we sent, right? When was that? I had the date down in front of me. February 10th, right? That was this letter, that I drafted and that we approved in open meeting and sent to St. Mark's as a covering letter over top of the original document that had come from Brona Simon at the Mass Historical Commission, articulating what her concerns were after reviewing the information that Michael had presented to them, the documentation. And of course, they sent someone out to look at the site, walk through it. Brona Simon issued the letter, and sort of there it sat for a couple months until we tried to, light a fire under some people by sending our own letter, again with the original Brona Simon letter undercover. And I had been asked by Andrew Dennington, of course, serves on, both select board and on the working group, if I had heard from St. Mark's. And I said, well, no, not yet. But that doesn't surprise me. It's a very complicated issue, and I'm sure they need some time to think about it. So I heard on March 4th from the CFO of St. Mark's, and we had a fairly long, very cordial conversation. And I just, and he was calling me about our letter. And I said, well, I just, again, kind of reiterated what our position was, is simply that, this is not done in any kind of spirit of obstruction. It's simply, we did what we're supposed to do as a historical commission. We sought advice from the higher authority. We received it. These are the professionals at the state level. This is what they recommend. Here it is. What are you going to do? And we agree philosophically with that position that it's kind of, it's problematic to contemplate, putting a park or a memorial to Nipmuc Nation if you don't determine whether or not there are Native American burials underneath the ground, right on the very land. And he was sympathetic to that. He said, yeah, I get, where you're coming from, and I understand. It's problematic. We talked about the expense of it, and kind of sundry concerns, but without recapping, a 45-minute conversation, I'll say that the bottom line at the end of it, and again, this was on March 4th, so almost 2 weeks ago, was that he said, well, I said, I want to report this call to my commission. And, finally, the end of the line was, I thought by now we would actually have a written response from them, but they haven't gotten to it. And at that point, he said, I said, well, is it fair to say that you're still contemplating your response? And he said, yes. And I said, may I report that to my commission? And he said, yes. And so that's where we're at. They're still thinking about it. And he wouldn't commit. He didn't say no, he didn't say yes. They're taking it seriously and they're thinking about it. So I respect that. And I said, I appreciate the outreach. And, thank you very much. And let's talk again if there's something to talk about. So that's where I'm at with St. Mark's. Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, did he give any indication of which way they're leaning, or is it really just a perfunctory, we want to make sure we talk to you before?
I wouldn't call it perfunctory. It was an engaged, serious conversation. And again, the problem with this stuff is I understand. I don't want to be naive about it. It touches on a lot of live wires, right? There's a lot of other issues that, as I've made clear, I don't consider it the Historical Commission's bailiwick, to talk about licensing agreements and easements. That's going to be discussed elsewhere. I'm strictly concerned with what I take to be our mandate, which is the historical end of it, and the fact that there are these potential, burials. And so, but, inevitably, he's looking at it, and St. Mark's as from a sort of much broader perspective. So I was, I didn't want to really get into that stuff. I mean, I'm trying to keep us, like I said, I think it's a much cleaner position for us to take. It's just to stay in our lane and do what we do, and leave the other decisions to the people charged with making them. So that said, I have had several conversations with Marguerite Landry, who is the chair of the working group. And she is very vigorously, as I told you guys last time, I spoke on that first call they had, because they called to me. I was just in the audience. And again, and I offered our help if we could help, and conversation and consult. And I said, we're all trying to just find a good way kind of out of this that makes everybody happy and satisfies the consciences of the people involved. So Marguerite has been very, very active in trying to reach out to the Nipmucks, she's done some outreach to the Mass Historical Commission herself. She was also in contact today, or sent an email to Jim Peters, he's actually a member of the Mashpee tribe of the Wampanoag Nation, and the head of the Mass Commission on Indian Affairs. And he actually was CC'd on that original letter from Brona Simon. And again, because I don't want to steal Marguerite's thunder in their own meeting, but what she had communicated to me was that in talking to Mass Historical today, that they felt that, according to Mass Historical, because state money has now been expended on this, that Mass DOT should have had, because it came from shared streets money. This is the kind of road that I don't really want to go down, but we find ourselves sort of pulled into it. That because there's state money, highway money is involved, that should have triggered a review by the Mass Historical Commission on this point. And the question then was put, has that been done? And I guess that would go to the head of the DPW. So, as much as I want to stay out of all of this stuff, I'm trying to navigate a position where we follow through on what our concern is. And I appreciate the working group trying to sort of ferret out various elements of this. And because I said to Marguerite, I said, look, we sort of put our position on the table, and it was in the form of that letter and the Brona Simon material. And now we're just waiting for the response. And until there is one, I wasn't clear how much further, we should be pushing. And in a way that the working group, I think, is well positioned to take a kind of fresh approach and to sort of deal with what they perceive to be the various issues. And then I simply said that from a historical perspective, we're available. And I said, I offered, for instance, that it might be appropriate for us to have a joint meeting at some point. Again, just in the spirit of, trying to get to a solution. So, for instance, and this is then I'll shut up about this because we got to get through other stuff. But on their last meeting, there was some discussion. Mr. Dennington kind of was proposing or contemplating the idea of, Michael had suggested this amphitheater idea for next to the Historical Society Museum, but kind of, well, what if we did that in that plot of land in the St. Mark's Triangle? And there was, I didn't speak in this meeting, I was just there watching. But there was sort of pushback from people that they didn't want that kind of hardscape approach. And I did talk to Marguerite, and I just said, my personal feeling is I would like the softest footprint as possible. And we talked about, for instance, this is all speculation, about a kind of remembrance garden or this kind of thing where it was just a place of very quiet contemplation in a respectful way. And because if we arrive at the point that St. Mark's, refuses to do the investigation and the town doesn't want to do it, then what is the softest, gentlest way that we can deal with this land? And this is where I was actually very curious about, what would an ethicist say about this? Would that be okay? I don't know. My mind is open. And so the conversation continues. And I think I'm leaving some stuff out because there's been so much going on in this. But once again, I come back to the fact that I have so much respect for that particular working group.
I think they're doing a terrific job, Kevin. I think it's a great group. Could I add one thing though, that we seem to, it's the possible Nipmuc burial site is very important, and we have some evidence to support it, but we also have some evidence to support that there could be colony or colonists buried outside the walls too. We know that there are some in that area between Pilgrim Church and the old burial ground. They could have gone in before the walls went up. And so we can't get, what am I trying to say? If we make it okay with ourselves that, we don't need to do anything about the possible Indigenous burials, we also do have to consider the there.
Right. Well, I'm actually, I'm very curious to watch the recording of their meeting tomorrow, because I know that Dan Blanchard had something on their agenda about site visit artifacts, something. So I'm dying to know if there's further development. So I think maybe the place to sort of leave it is, let's all go watch this. Yeah. Because they're doing yeoman work, and they're really putting the energy and the heart out to try to resolve it in a good way. So I can't wait to see what they have to say. But I did offer to Marguerite, I said, I don't want to step on your turf in any way, but if it would be helpful to you folks at some point, I think they need a little more time. But they may arrive at some juncture where a conversation with us would be fruitful. And I took it upon myself, I must admit, to volunteer, that I thought the commission would be amenable to that. Again, in the spirit of trying to move it forward. So anybody got anything else on this?
I think it's a bonus if we can, obviously they've been appointed, but the opportunity for us at any point going forward to, meet and work collaboratively with some other groups like that is a real positive thing. And I've watched their meetings up to this point too, and they're an impressive group. They are an impressive group. So.
Well, and again, like I emphasized to the CFO at St. Mark's, it really is we want to see a good solution. You know, we want to see a good solution and we want to help. So let's see how it goes. The next thing I've got is a quick update on the 42 Main Street demolition delay process. Our hearing is set, and I will notify Lori Lavoli at the building department tomorrow morning that the hearing is for April 12th. So we're still in the window. And I actually booked the room, the virtual meeting room today. I was hoping to wait until we met because I was going to suggest bumping the meeting to a 7 o'clock start because I thought it might draw more people. I think this is going to be a very, very, very important hearing. But I was actually, because one of the rooms is already booked and I was really worried that, somebody else is going to get it because I know this problem comes up. I just said, to heck with it and booked it. So we're booked 6 to 8:30 on, that's a Tuesday, April 12th for the hearing. We have the site tour booked for Wednesday. That's next Wednesday, the 23rd at 2:30, and several of us are going to go that. And just for the record, this is something that it's one of the exceptions to the definition of a meeting is that you can have a site visit as long as you don't do any deliberating or discussing. And so we don't have to post an agenda. I confirm this with the town clerk. And so we're clear to go and take a walk through as led by Diane Byrne at the Fay School of 42 Main and to sort of see it for ourselves. I'll take some photographs and stuff like that. I'll bring my own camera and we'll, move forward. I had also a conversation with a member of the planning board in the last couple of days because I was wanted to get a little bit up to speed, being new to all this stuff on the adaptive reuse bylaw, because we have discussed that before in connection to this property. As we've already established, 42 Main does have a history as having some commercial life because it was the Dr. Stone office in that sort of eastern wing of the building, and then also before that a barber shop. Yeah. And so I just wanted to get some sense. For instance, of what the history and what the general feeling about planning board's experience with this. And of course, it's only been done once before in town, which is for the, Fayetteville Town Hall. That's the building that, is at this point gutted out. Oh gosh.
John Deli Friscoli.
John Deli Friscoli owns and has got plans for and so on. So I've been reading that bylaw kind of over and over again. And since planning is the major player because they are the special permit granting authority that you have to get clear of if you want to do adaptive reuse, it was just useful to me to have a conversation with someone who would be involved with it on the topic and just to get a kind of general sense of how it would work. But that I still consider that sort of on the boards as a possibility. And again, the coordination with Diane Byrne of Fay has been very cordial. And, I look forward to hearing what they have to say about it. And I'm pleased that they seem, quite open-minded. Because I think everybody would hate to see that building go. So the other thing I wanted to say about the 42 demolition delay process, I really would like to get your input on this. I really want a good turnout for that hearing because I think it is critical. And the public part of the process, is just really vital. And to the point where I wondered if we ought to entertain a little bit further outreach for this particular meeting than the typical just posting of an agenda. If it would be worth, I had actually drafted even a letter that I don't know. I need some advice on this. I'm quite serious about it. Whether or not it would make sense to, contact, I hesitate to say this because there's a lot of hot feeling in town these days about my Southborough. All I ever hear is the blog, the blog, the blog. There was, I think the select board meeting last night led with the comment about the blog, and everybody's worked up about the blog at all times. Nonetheless, it being sort of central to the life of the town, I wondered if, it would be worth contacting Beth Malo and asking her to sort of feature this, or to just send a letter drawing attention to the hearing. So for instance, I drafted something very brief, just saying, we have this hearing. This is an important property. Please come and participate, because public participation is a vital part of the process. So I just wanted to get your sense if that was something we should even do or not.
I think in the past it's been challenging to stay away from almost being activist in what we do,
Right.
but still making people aware of what's happening. It's challenging. It's a fine line to walk.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to seem like, I'm putting my thumb on the scales. But
Yeah.
I really do want people to know that this is on our screen, and to show up and to say what they think. What I found with other, I saw this all through the demolition delay, not demolition delay, I'm sorry, the downtown district process, where I felt like I was kind of the lone wolf howling in the wilderness, showing up at certain meetings and speaking in public comment, and I'm finding out that there's nobody else there. Like, that people didn't seem to know about certain things. So I'm a little, I don't know. Like, I don't want to look like I'm trying to influence the process, but on the other hand, the commission has already voted 5-0 that we think this is a significant property. So I don't think it's any surprise to say, come to the meeting and voice your opinion. And of course, when you do that, you might get people that come a real sort of the hard line kind of like rights of property thing, who can't stand the demolition delay bylaw and will be only too glad to show up at a hearing and say how much it stinks, and what rotten cads you are for trying to do something with it. So I'd be prepared for that. But
Kevin, you were asking, do we post it on my Southborough or not? I think if it's worded the way I know you will, if just here's the facts, we're going to review this in a public setting. It's 42 Main, and here's a little bit of the, 1 or 2 sentences about historical background. I don't see that it is any harm in doing that. Anybody else can comment. But the thing I was going to recommend, if we can, if it's not running afoul of anything, is to send that same notice in an email and take advantage of all of the email lists that we have, including the one for the society, and basically publicize it that way.
Yeah. Is that even better, just to do it that way, or to ask again? This is the first of I have many acts maybe of cooperation with the Historical Society that ask them to send it out.
I think it's a better fit for the society to do that.
Because I'm torn about it, because I just think about the other processes and other boards that post public hearing notices, and that sort of the main line of communication is that you post all the notices. It's out there for people to access, whether they choose to or not, because then I just think it's a precedent that we might be setting, that every time that and it doesn't come up often, I realize, in such a small town, but are we going to continually, announce that we're having a public hearing on my Southborough? Is that something that we want to do regularly?
Right.
Or is it something that we inform the society that this is going on, and perhaps let them inform people if they'd like to come and speak? I'm not
That's
sure.
a good point, Kate, because I could envision someone saying, why didn't you post a hearing about this property
Right,
on my Southborough? Well, I think it's important and,
Right.
unfair. So
and
I-
process is super important to me, right? And I know that we're already doing that, and so it's going to be publicly posted by us, by a town board. And I think that's probably the process that we should follow. I don't know if we want to take it a step further from that, and because it is technically on my Southborough, right? When Beth posts
Right.
the meetings that are upcoming, she will list it there. So I don't know. I think it might be a lot. I think it might blur the lines a little bit, and I'm not sure that we want to go down that road, but I'm not against it. I'm just trying to talk it through.
You just talked me out of it. I think
Sorry.
honestly, I'm sorry to jump in, but I think you're dead right. I mean, I think you're dead right. Like, this is why God bless you all. This is why I need you, yeah, let's let the society know. They can notify their members. I know Michael cares quite a bit about this property, as do we. And yeah, because I think it's so right that people are going to ask, as Rebecca says, well, why are you, doing the extra step to promote this one, but not this one?
Okay.
it's kind of an all or nothing thing. And I don't know if we want to.
Right.
This
Because
is,
I remember when we did, it was either 2 or 4 Sears. Was it 4 Sears, the pretty house, Rebecca?
Yeah.
And it did get out there a little bit via the society. And so there were people that were interested and attended the public hearing about that house. But I think as a commission, we just followed the real process of the commission and publicly posting and going about our hearing that way. So
I agree.
that would sort of be my suggestion, my input.
Agreed.
how are you on that, Annie?
Oh yeah, I said I agree. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, good. Thank you. That keep me from doing anything stupid as my.
No, I don't think it would be stupid. I just think that we don't want to. No, I don't think it's stupid. I think it's a nice idea. I think it may complicate things for us.
Yeah, I don't want to look like we're pot stirring,
Yeah,
but I do really hope for like a good turnout. Better than we've
Absolutely.
got tonight. God bless you, Dave, for hanging in there. We had nobody else. I hope we get a good turnout, and I hope people speak up about it.
Well, it's sort of that line of us always saying as a commission, and I, even though there are people who disagree, I think the majority of the time we have, we're doing what is within our charge to do. And even as far as St. Mark's goes, or this house, is that this information came to us from the building department. And we have followed this process in order to do what's within our purview to do, which is to, so far we've said it's historically and architecturally significant. Now we'll go through the public hearing process. And I think we just have to follow that process.
Okay.
Super. I will go then to item 7. We're almost home. And I only put this on here. This was a note about discussing next steps in advancing revision of the rules and regulations associated with the demolition delay bylaw. The only reason I put this on here tonight was because I thought, this all sort of blew up like kind of last June in terms of when it got a little controversial over a particular property. And, suddenly there have been a lot of various things going on, distractions for us. But I was sort of alarmed to think, that we're several months away from a kind of 1-year anniversary of that. And I would just like to put it on people's screens. This is such a complicated thing. And I want to go back and watch. I don't know if you recall, but it was October 4th meeting when we had town council in. And I want to go back and with Jay Tallerman, and I want to go back and rewatch that full recording, because unfortunately I was teaching that night and I was late to the meeting as it was. But I want to hear that from the beginning, because frankly, it's all gotten a little fuzzy for me in the intervening months, and probably for you folks as well. So I thought was going to encourage you all maybe to like rewatch that when you're just looking for some kicks, you know. Watch an old meeting, and because I'd like to reinitiate that discussion sometime very, very soon, and just get a kind of framework. I do think there's a much larger conversation to be had about, look, ultimately the demolition delayed bylaw can only do so much, right? It slows, but does not stop. And I think maybe there's a larger conversation to be engaged with people in the town about whether something more like a historic district that would actually, impose some limits. But that's all way down the road. We have to, and we're functioning fine, of course, without the rules and regs, just on the bylaw. And I think this is an area where we have to go with some caution and some care. But I would just like to say that I think we need to sort of get off our keister and do it soon. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the way the things have sort of played out. But so I'm going to in the next week or two watch that meeting again and try to get my head back in the game on this. And it was just a heads up that hopefully we can do that. And I don't know if anyone has immediate thoughts. I even thought at some point we may establish some kind of smaller working group just to sort of hack through some of these details. If any of you are interested in that, or it just, I'm struggling with the fact that we did that in October with Mr. Tallerman, and we've sort of since kind of lost a certain momentum on it, which I'd like to rekindle going forward.
And then maybe going forward, we can revisit, another meeting with Jay. If we get, further along.
I think we'll need it, but I also thought to myself that we should probably, like, just for my own sake, I thought, man, I got to watch this and get my head back into the game and really look hard at this and get my own thoughts in line so that we don't waste his time.
Yeah.
Am I remembering it correctly? Whereas of that last meeting, we actually have a draft of the rules and regs that we have feedback on, and we could take it the next step if we wanted to, or is it dead in the water? Do we have something we can work with?
I kind of felt we were back at square one. It was like, it reminds me of playing one of those chutes and ladders, and you hit the chute and you're back down at the bottom,
I'm sure the version that was up on the website isn't like it's gone. I don't have access to it because that was pre me even being on the commission. I don't, but I don't think, I don't know. I don't think we have anything really.
I thought
say there was a redlined version of
I'm remembering
the actual bylaw.
That's what I'm remembering.
Not the rules and regulations.
Right.
I think we kind of need to start from square one
Yes.
on the rules and regulations. But I do remember thinking that it was like we as a commission had started talking about making changes to the bylaw well before this process came about with the attorney. And so the attorney has weighed in on like the existing bylaw, but then we had also started discussions about potentially changing the bylaw. Like remember like a long time ago, we talked about instead of it being the listed properties, anything that was X number of years, like kind of changing the criteria.
The rolling date.
Yeah, the building date.
Yeah.
So I wonder like if this is the opportunity to kind of reinitiate that conversation as well. Because I think it was even on like the draft, like a draft warrant. I think eventually pulled it because we weren't ready or it wasn't the right time. But we had started, talking about changing the actual bylaw too.
Right, because it says like it refers to a building constructed prior to 1925. So maybe we had talked about changing that, like just to
X number of years.
right. A few things like that.
75 years old or something.
Yeah.
I remember the attorney comments also that put a limit or kind of a caution on, you can't expect to force a property owner to do anything.
Right.
And that is all you can hope for. And so that kind of limited the enthusiasm. Maybe we had to curb our enthusiasm for just how punitive we could be. But I think it'd be worthwhile, and I would support the idea of a working session even by law, parallel with some rules or regs so we can consider them side by side.
Mhm.
Well, maybe after the hearing that we conducted our next meeting on the 12th, that we put that as an agenda item just to sort of set that up.
Yeah.
Plan that give us some time to pull up some of the older documents. And again, I'd like to go back and watch that meeting again and personally get my head back in the game a little bit. Now that we have
the important thing is that the rules and regs have to lead directly back to the bylaw and be sort of clarifying something there, not creating new
right.
laws.
Right. And that was, to me, that was the fundamental takeaway from, the town council's remarks last time. Good. All right. So we'll keep that in our sort of sights. Lastly, any other business? I don't have any, thankfully. This has been a long one. I'm very sorry. I promise you, I'm going to practice being a lot speedier because yeah.
I think it's great. I feel like we had a lot of really good dialogue and conversation. I think it's great.
And here's to hoping that we can meet in person soon.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I know Zoom was like approved by the state to go through July 15th. I know that town is working to figure out how to continue to offer Zoom, I think, for people. Whether that becomes a reality or not, I know that they're trying to work on it, but I believe I heard that the select board is going to meet and discuss this by, I think, the end of March. I think they're still waiting on like Board of Health because there is still social distancing guidelines in effect. So once those change a little bit, then having in-person meetings might change. So that's good. Because we're trying to figure it out for town meeting, yeah.
They talked the other night about the select board about this OWL technology that sort of picks up, that allows you to run an in-person meeting, but there's also this kind of, I got this vision of this thing sort of hovering that kind of, it directs toward the speaker and will allow, which I think if it works, it sounds wonderful, really, because I must say it's been a boon to me to be able to catch a lot of meetings.
Well, like I don't want to necessarily attend a lot of them in person. I can't, but to be able to then watch this St. Mark's one or go through the ARPA one or different things like that. And I know it has really increased public participation. So hopefully they'll be able to figure something out. So you never know. But so hopefully we'll be able to meet in person soonish. That'd be nice.
Any other business anybody has that we can legally take up? Then we move on to public comment. If anyone cares to speak, now is the time. If you would raise your hand. Going once, we have 3 guests, well, 2 guests besides Dave. Nope. All right. Thanks very much. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, roll call vote then. Kate?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
Annie?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Miller says aye. We are adjourned. I am thrilled. Thank you all so much. And we will see you, a couple of you, in a couple of days for the site tour of 42 Main. And next time, the hearing on Tuesday, April 12th at 6. That's it, friends. Good night.
Good night, all. Nice to see you all.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
That too.